John Myers.
Well, again, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Producer John not going to be with us this morning, but that's okay. Matt's got those controls. I'm Steve West. We'll talk to Matt here in just a moment. We got plenty to talk about. All the series that we now cover on a regular basis are done for 2023. Thing is, we only got 77 days as of today to the Daytona 500, 98 days until the 2024 Formula One season gets underway. So it's really closing in much quicker than what you might have actually thought for seasons just ending. But we have noted many, many times here on the show over the years that we often find there's more news that comes in the off season than during the season. That holds for this show. So grab a coffee and a biscuit and let's get busy in a show that talks about media rights deals in both the NASCAR series and IndyCar. We're talking more tracks and the superstar racing experience. We also will compare historic seasons in Formula One and the NHRA. When was the last time you compared F1 and the NHRA? And there's a whole lot more next on CRN.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. On the Championship Racing Network.
Yeah, let's get this thing underway here. First off, want to say good morning and hope you had a happy Thanksgiving weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Everything went well. You were out of town and out of touch, which is why we didn't even try to worry about doing a remote show last weekend.
Yeah, I kind of went off the radar for a little bit, which was a little refreshing.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to do that.
Yep.
So I found myself with the ability to do that myself. Went down, saw a friend down on the Gulf Coast, and had a good time over the weekend.
I can only take one guess, and I guarantee you I'm right.
You are. We had a good time down there, and hope you guys did too. Yeah, we missed you last weekend, and a lot happened over the past couple of weeks since the last we talked. But let's go ahead and do the recap real quick. Formula One wrapping up their 2023 season with 2 races in the time that we were away. We begin with the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix. We're not going to go into much detail here. You probably already know about it. We'll talk about the racing itself. On the untested street course, 1.3 mile long straightaway, using a portion of the Vegas Strip. A whole lot of knowns about how the racing might be. You actually said that you stayed up and you watched it live. I'm sorry. I'm too dang old to do that. But what did you think?
Well, it was definitely interesting to see 1,000 horsepower cars blasting off on a completely green surface.
Oh, yeah.
At night, in the wind, cool temperatures, which will be less grip.
Oh, sure.
Considerably less grip. It was the only one word I can use to describe it. It was interesting.
Yeah. I will say this. I had fears about this because, like you were saying, you start hearing about all the different ways that things are going there, the weather, all of that. Plus, they were talking about having just redone portions of the track. So you had brand new asphalt laid down beforehand. And then, of course, you had the problem that we talked about the last time that we were on the air when the practice situation happened and blew up one of the Ferraris, effectively. So I got really worried about what the racing might be. Turned out it was better than I expected.
Once they got going, yeah. It was better.
Once everything got going, they got the heat in the tires. Yeah, it was Max Verstappen's day. Spoiler alert. But there was actually a lot more passing within the field, I think, than just about anybody expected.
It was. There were, let's see. At the end of the strip, I know was one pretty decent passing zone.
Yep.
What's the other one? Coming off of the main straightaway, going into the first turn. Okay. I thought that was a decent passing zone.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Those are the 2 that stick out the most.
Yeah. And, I mean, those guys, they were booking. Because, I mean, we talked about it, 1.3 mile long straight. And those guys were in top gear and flat out.
Yeah, they were in 8th gear in a hurry.
And they were staying at it for not an insignificant length of time in the grand scheme of things.
No.
I mean, they were on it and right up against the limiters.
They was on, as the old saying goes, you was on the power band for a long time.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to watch as this goes along because they've got a 10-year deal. I don't think they're going to go away anytime too soon because this brought in a lot of money.
It did. I mean, the crowd was a little bit bigger, I think, than what they expected it, even though night number 1 for practice was absolute debacle.
Sure.
It ended up turning out to be positive.
Yeah.
So all you can say is we'll just see where next year goes.
Yep. And a lot of people are saying, despite some of the moronic comments by some of the drivers who they like to be all by themselves, this may end up being not all aspects of it by any stretch of the imagination, but I think Las Vegas is going to set a new bar for how some races in Formula One are actually going to start to present themselves here in the near future. They're going to take some of those aspects and integrate them into their own.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, they've got it. I think it's 1 week earlier on the 24 schedule.
Yeah, and I would agree. I mean, you're talking about going halfway around the world.
Yeah,
between the last 2 races of the year. And if you're going to do that, sure. Considering the fact that they've got that kind of a schedule where they're world travelers, you can work that in.
But when you look at the next year's schedule compared to what else is racing in the United States, Cup is in Las Vegas the same weekend as F1's in Coda.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
At the end, as we noted, Max Verstappen did claim another win. Here's the thing, though. It was by a relatively slim 2.07 seconds over Charles Leclerc in a Ferrari. He was left lamenting out on a missed opportunity. He ended up splitting, though, the Red Bull. Sergio Perez claimed 3rd. Rest of your top 10, Esteban Ocon, Lance Stroll, Carlos Sainz, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, and that rookie, Oscar Piastri, continues to impress with a top 10 finish once again.
He does.
As I noted, then a trip halfway around the world, finish off the season in Abu Dhabi. Max Verstappen gets the pole, converts that into a win, making a record 19 wins in 22 races this year. We'll deal with that a little bit more when we get into Formula One news. The standing start really was the question because Charles Leclerc was once again left lamenting out on a missed opportunity. Verstappen defending going into turn 1, and, well, that was pretty much that. Sergio Perez crossed the finish line second, but he incurred a 5-second penalty for causing a collision. You and I kind of got into a text back and forth on that, and we thought that that was the very least of what he deserved.
Yeah.
So Leclerc ends up getting credited with second, George Russell third. The ticked off, which we'll detail that more, Sergio Perez falls back to fourth. Lando Norris was fifth, then Oscar Piastri. There's that kid again. Fernando Alonso, Yuki Tsunoda, Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll filling out the final top 10 of the 2023 season. Your final standings go down like this. Max Verstappen, of course, your championship winner, racking up 575 points to Sergio Perez's second place total of 285. We'll get back to that more in the news, too. Lewis Hamilton third with 234, 206 for Fernando Alonso, and Charles Leclerc's late season surge puts him up to fifth with 206. He does lose out to Alonso on a tiebreaker. Alonso had a much better beginning half of the season. So despite the fact that they tied, tiebreaker goes to Alonso there. 6 through 10, Lando Norris at 205. You got 200 for Carlos Sainz, George Russell at 175. Oscar Piastri, rookie year, 97. They're expecting big things from him, I guarantee. 74 for Lance Stroll. That rounds out your top 10. Pierre Gasly was 11th with 62. Esteban Ocon, 58. Alexander Albon with 27. 17 for Yuki Tsunoda. Valtteri Bottas, one-time championship contender with Mercedes. He had only 10. But he did beat out Nico Hulkenberg, who had 9. Daniel Ricciardo's 6. Remember, he didn't start until after the August break. Mm-hmm. And he had to miss a few races because of an injury. 6 ties. Ricciardo was Zhou Guan Yu. Ricciardo technically with the tiebreaker. You got Kevin Magnussen, who racked up a whole 3 points. Liam Lawson's part-time efforts resulted in 2. 1 point for the rookie, Logan Sargent. We'll talk more about him in a bit, too. And Nick DeVries, who was fired halfway through the season, could not accrue any points in a woeful AlphaTauri entry that finally caught fire later on in the year. Final Constructors' Cup standings put Red Bull on top, 860 points. To second place Mercedes at 409.
Oof.
Yeah. Mercedes 409 barely tops Ferrari's 406. Then you got McLaren with 302. 280 for Aston Martin, 120 for Alpine. Then you drop all the way down to Williams with 28. AlphaTauri, as we noted, caught fire late in the season, climbed out of the cellar. Late season surge puts them at 25 points. They finish in 8th. 9th place to Alfa Romeo with 16. And Haas F1, which kind of had a promising start to the year, fell flat on their faces.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Faded to last with 12. At one point in time, and granted, this was, I want to say, after the third or maybe the fourth race of the year, Haas F1 was sitting in 4th in the Constructors' Cup points. Mm-hmm. Dead last at the end. Well, that means that the season's over for all series that we regularly cover, but there is racing this weekend, not the least of which, the famed Snowball Derby. Comes up at Five Flag Speedway in Pensacola, Florida. Supposed to be later this evening as we air live on Saturday. Weather could be an issue, but I'm hearing that things might, and I express the word might, move out in time to let them get the racing in.
It's a really big key word right there.
Yeah. FlowRacing.com?
Racing America.
RacingAmerica.com. Thank you very much. I couldn't remember which one it was.
All Racing right. America.
Yep. 7 o'clock, if I remember right. Central? Or earlier?
It's start time?
Yeah. Is it earlier?
Snowflake. The Pro Late model race runs at night. The Snowball runs during the day.
Oh, okay. What time?
Yeah, Snowball, I think, starts 2:30 or 3.
Oh.
Somewhere in there. Scheduled start time. This 300 lap race.
Get your laptop over there, put it on Racing America. You'll have your TV on the SEC title game. You'll be good to go. Have your own media center going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do this. Let's talk a little Cup Series news here. And we're only going to detail this right now, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back and we'll talk about some of the other stuff. But maybe the biggest news, truth be told. Now, usually when a series wraps up, we'll lead off with that one. But
sure.
Again, going back to something that producer John kind of dealt with was take the biggest news since the previous show and lead off with that, regardless of what the series is.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do, because NASCAR President Steve Phelps was part of a webinar on Monday that was during the 4th annual Race Industry Week conference. And he announced that the TV deals were expected to be announced soon for the Cup Series and the Craftsman Truck Series, said that the Cup Series deal was expected to be finalized and ready to be announced soon. Again, remember, this is Monday. He added that the new deal, which would start officially in 2025, will likely have Fox and NBC continuing to split the season, but said likely there was going to be at least a third player. We've noted here on the show, likely that was the streaming service, probably Amazon Prime. Phelps added, though, that the media rights fees were set to increase in the new deal, and it was really necessary for the teams who are looking to continue the charter agreement beyond 2024 as well. Well, on Wednesday afternoon, the sanctioning body did announce the finalized new television deal that will take effect, again, beginning in 2025. As opposed to the deal that ends at the end of the 2024 season, a 10-year deal, this one's a 7-season deal to cover the Cup Series. They're going to split it, as usual, as we've gotten used to, between Fox Sports and NBC Sports. But instead of adding one extra factor, they've actually added two. They're bringing back TNT. And TNT hasn't aired a race since, what, 2014? 2013? Somewhere in that area?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
And they are adding in that streaming service, Amazon Prime, as expected. Now, here's the split. Fox Sports will continue to carry the first part of the season, but their split drops from half of all of the events, 36 races, plus then you get the duels and the All-Star race and the Busch Light Clash. So technically you get 40 events.
TNT was 2014.
Yeah, okay. Fox had 20 of the events, including non-points paying out, and NBC Sports had 20 events, right? Well, now Fox drops to 14. They do get the Busch Light Clash. They do get the duels. They get the All-Star race non-points events as well. But it also should be noted that of those 14 races, only 5 are going to appear on Fox. In other words, the remainder get relegated to cable and Fox Sports 1. But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Amazon Prime on race 15 will pick up the coverage. Now, of course, this is solely on the streaming platform, 5 races. Then they'll turn over things to TNT Sports, who will cover the next 5 races, all on cable, before they turn things over to NBC Sports. NBC, of course, gets the final 14 events of the 2025 through 2031 seasons. That means they get the entire run of the playoffs on the Cup Series. Because remember, CW Network gets the Xfinity Series, and as they did announce, I was going to save that for later, but I'll go ahead and announce it now, Fox Sports 1 retained the entirety of the Craftsman Truck Series season.
For the love of mankind and the good Lord above, stop, dear Fox, stop with this remote broadcast bullcrap.
Yeah, I get it. It costs a little bit of money to do that, but you're spending money to go do this anyway. Go do it right.
There was zero excuse whatsoever for you to have your broadcast team trying to broadcast the championship race from North Carolina when the series is in Arizona.
Yeah.
There's no excuse for that.
There's way too much that you can miss, and I get it. I've seen control rooms, command centers, whatever you want to call it. And the situation is you have your monitors that are in front of you so that you can see a clear shot, and then you see the overlay of what the graphics look like.
Mm-hmm.
That's right in front of you.
Right.
But there are other screens within that command center that will show you every camera angle, and there are multiple cameras at every race. There's probably anywhere from 6 to a dozen cameras at any given racetrack, depending on how big it is and how big the race is.
Sure.
In this case, you're probably talking 8 to 10 cameras for the championship weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a monitor that's a big screen that has all of those camera angles on that screen in a grid pattern.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is, I don't care how much you're looking at I'll throw out a number, 75-inch screen that's split 8 different ways. You're going to miss stuff. As opposed to being there with Jamie Little, Phil Parsons, Michael Waltrip, all 3 of them can be looking really at different places at different times, and they're going to catch everything that's going on the track much faster than you'll see it happen on a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And you're really not spending a whole lot of money flying them from Charlotte to Phoenix. You flew out all the other people or drove them out there for the Fox Sports truck to get all that stuff sent back to Charlotte. Take the 3 of them, too. It's not that hard.
Yeah, and if I understood it right, TNT Sports is going to be simulcast through the Bleacher Report streaming app.
Okay.
So that's going to be
Congratulations.
yeah, it's going to be a simulcast. So, but
back to NBC,
yeah,
who again has all of the 10 playoff races for the Cup Series. They've already noted that only 4 of their 14 races will be on the main network. The rest will be on Cable's USA. That means that the majority of the playoff races, no matter how you cut it, even if they air the last 4 playoff races on NBC, the majority of the playoff races are going to be on cable, not on the broadcast network. Here's the good news. They do get more money out of this. I'll break that down here in a minute. But the bad news is that I think NASCAR kind of got, well, screwed. Because
that's an understatement.
We've talked about this many, many times on this show. But I'll reiterate it for those who are brand new to us, either on air or on our CRN Live on YouTube page. In television ratings, in sports, in the United States of America, there is a king. It's the National Football League. Undisputed. Second in line is college football. We love our football here in the United States of America. Especially on a weekend like this, where you've got conference championship games all over the place. That means big, high-profile matchups. It's not just Alabama, Georgia here in the SEC, which is a big one. But Michigan, Iowa is a big one. Mm-hmm. Texas, Oklahoma State is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Games like that. Okay? In third place, it's the Cup Series. Now, this is average over the course of a year. Specific races or specific games alter things up. Some matchups are not quite as impressive, and the Cup Series beats out a college football game. Other times, you get a really, really big Major League Baseball game, and everybody tunes into that, and they beat the Cup Series race. But over the course of a season, taking an average run-of-the-mill race versus an average run-of-the-mill Major League Baseball game, NBA basketball game, National Hockey League hockey game, the Cup Series will beat out all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Third on the totem pole. Why are you letting Fox and NBC dictate that the majority of the races that they're going to run end up on cable instead of over the air? Because the other thing that we've noticed about television ratings, more people tune in to the broadcast networks than they do to the cable networks. Why? Well, first of all, we're starting to cut the cable. Fewer and fewer people every single day, week, month, and year over the past several years are keeping their satellite and or cable subscriptions, and they're moving to streaming, which does make the Amazon Prime move pretty smart. It's still a little preliminary, but yeah, they're a little ahead of the game, and I understand that. But when you get bigger returns from your viewership on your network versus your cable partner, and you're spending as much money as they're spending that we'll detail after the break, why are you hamstringing yourself and putting this on your cable partner?
24% of the total races next year are on an over-the-air signal. 24%.
That's sad. In fact, that's horrible.
Very.
In comparison, NBC, and we'll detail this, they're about to enter their final year of their partnership with Indycar. 17 races last year. 14 of them were on the over-the-air network. NASCAR has generally 3 to 3.5 times the viewership numbers that the average IndyCar race has. Think about that for a minute.
Stay right here for more on the Championship Racing Network. Championship Racing Network.
All right, so now that we know the breakdown beginning in 2025, 14 races Fox Sports, 5 Amazon Prime, 5 TNT Sports, then 14 more, and wrapping up the season on NBC Sports. Exactly what races are going to go to what platform? Well, other than the Daytona 500, which kicks off the season, truth be told, we don't really know. Because NASCAR is promising that they're going to continue to adjust the schedule around, moving races around on the schedule. So it should be noted that here's what we do know. Any practice and all qualifying sessions are going to be shown on both Amazon Prime and TNT Sports. That happens through the entirety of the contract. Okay, so it really doesn't matter. I presume that the Fox Sports or NBC Sports commentators will do the job for Amazon Prime and or TNT.
You would think.
But that's an assumption because neither Amazon Prime nor TNT have announced who their Cup Series broadcast teams are going to be. And they've got a year to do it.
Considering, unless something changes between today and the time that it starts, there are 2 names that you go get. If I'm Amazon Prime and TNT, there are 2 names for my lead broadcaster that I go get, and it's that or bust.
Well, one is Alan Bestwick.
That's one.
Who's the other?
Vince Welch.
I see where you're going.
Vince Welch.
And, let's presume, because he's been there the first 3 years and he's already signed up for year 4, that Alan Bestwick continues with SRX.
Mm-hmm.
He could easily fit in Amazon Prime.
Yeah. I can see that.
I'm trying to remember, but I want to say the TNT Sports area kind of overlaps with SRX. But knowing SRX is doing Thursday Night Thunder, he might still be able to do that if TNT Sports really wanted him. And again, this is just me kind of thinking about the schedule without having actually looked and compared them both. But I do want to say the TNT Sports 5 races overlaps with SRX.
It's going to be close, yeah.
Okay. But yeah, I see where you're going, and I like it. But either way, we don't know yet. Things that we know, Daytona 500, Coca-Cola 600 not going to be moving off Memorial Day weekend. But that's probably right around the final Fox Sports coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Darlington, Labor Day weekend, Southern 500. Other than that, pretty much everything else is up in the air. They've even said we're willing to, although they're not for 2024, they might be willing to move the championship race out of Phoenix.
I've got a candidate for a place right down the road.
I doubt seriously they would bookend the year at super speedways unless it was Daytona. And I'm just saying that. I'd love it. I'd love it.
That would be fantastic.
I'd love to get a championship weekend at Talladega.
That would be fantastic.
I don't think it'll happen.
But here's my philosophy with this. If you can end the regular season at Daytona.
Or begin it.
Or begin the regular season at Daytona. And then in 24, begin the playoffs at Atlanta, which is now a de facto super speedway.
True.
There's no reason you can't close the final race out at a super speedway. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand where you're going. Let's see here. What else we got? Again, all practice qualifying sessions, any practice really, because we don't know how many times we're going to see an actual practice session. But they get it on Amazon Prime and TNT. You'll get it through the entirety of the contract there. Fox Sports signed to continue to air all Craftsman Truck Series races exclusively. We haven't heard whether or not they'll put one of the races on Fox, but they generally do put at least one a year on the main network. But now, considering the fact that only 5 of Fox Sports' Cup Series races are going to end up on Fox, I don't know whether they'll do that.
That's going to be Daytona. That will probably, I'll probably see that it'll be Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, Charlotte, and it would be 5.
Yeah, I was trying to think of some of the other races that might be early in the year if we use the 2024 schedule. I don't think I'd go Bristol or Martinsville. Choose one of the West Coast ones?
If it inlays close to as it lays now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
Might choose one on the west swing, Vegas or Phoenix, maybe.
If it lays close to as it lays now, Daytona, Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Races 1 and 2. Then they head west.
Vegas, Phoenix.
Come back.
Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega,
Charlotte, which would be Memorial Day weekend.
Coda.
Oh, yeah. Forgot Coda was in the beginning of the year.
Coda.
Yep. So it's kind of between those. Coda would be probably the most likely choice, but I could see either Vegas or Phoenix.
Let's see.
More likely Phoenix than Vegas if I were to guess.
Hey, Comcast NBC. See, here's a genius idea here that you may want to think of. 2024 of how the schedule starts for the Fox team.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Out of the first 15 broadcasted events, that's including qualifying and the duels,
Okay.
you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, only 6 on FS1.
Amazing how that switched.
Yeah, that's amazing how that switched.
So that, again, that's kind of the bad news. Here is the good news. Again, it's a 7-year deal. It's going to run 2025 through the 2031 seasons. It is reported to be worth $7.7 billion when you include the previously announced deal with CW Sports for the sole coverage of the Xfinity Series. That's a $1.1 billion deal all by itself. Now, keep in mind, NASCAR didn't release this number. The $7.7 billion for Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Series media rights of $7.7 billion comes straight from the Sports Business Journal. Now, we tend to trust the Sports Business Journal, so I would think it's probably right in that neighborhood, if not a bullseye on the number. So let's presume that the numbers are correct. It does mark a 40% increase over the deal that goes through next year when you take it on a yearly basis. Again, the current deal wrapping up at the end of the 2024 season was a 10-year deal at $8.2 billion total, breaking down to $820 million per year. The new deal breaks down to $1.1 billion annually amongst the 4 partners. So yeah, it is a better deal. It is what Steve Phelps and the folks at NASCAR, the France family, were looking for. The increase in the media rights deal in order to try and disperse money a little bit easier, have a little bit more money to disperse out to the teams, which was a concern amongst the Cup Series teams, the Xfinity Series teams that don't run a Cup, and same with the Truck Series teams that don't run a Cup team. That is a concern for all 3. A little bit of that profit sharing situation. So I get it. So in some ways they got what they wanted, but in other ways I think they got hamstrung. I think they got led around by the nose because, hey, we got our increase in the media rights deal, so yeah, you put the races wherever you want, instead of saying, hey, listen, let's try and get more races on the over-the-air networks.
I agree. I totally agree.
You got about 50% of really what you should have been negotiating for. And if you're happy, okay, great. But I think you could have asked for more, especially considering the fact that this is something that's been going on for, 5-6 months longer than they thought that it was going to take to get this announced?
From $820 million per year up to $1.1 billion per year, a $280 million increase in the overall deal for the Cup Series part.
Mm-hmm.
That $280 million, or let's just say $300 million, back to the teams.
Yeah,
get it back to the teams where they can put their cars on the track, or trucks or whatever successfully, and not have to go, oh, Matt, you want to drive? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want Talladega. I need $150,000.
Huh? You say what?
Huh?
Yeah.
Say it again. Sure. Here you go. Let me post-date the check for 2040.
Yeah. So, they say in negotiations, if both sides are a little unhappy, then it really is a good deal because, in the end, not everybody got exactly what they wanted, but you got what you needed. Borrow a Rolling Stones phrase.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, when you stop and you think about how much motorsports has seen a resurgence in television ratings, Cup Series not necessarily so much, but again, when you look at the overall grand scheme of things, Cup Series racing is number 3 on average amongst all major sports in the United States on television.
Yep.
And that they're still the monster. They're still the biggest draw amongst all motorsports viewing here in the United States of America. And the fact that ABC, ESPN might have been willing to come in. CBS might have been willing to come in because they saw big dividends out of the SRX series when they were running that on a Saturday night in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
You had options to say, hey, we could go over here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you got more money. But in the end, I think you kind of screwed yourself into the ground a little bit by not making sure that your television airings were set up probably the best way that they could have been.
Amazon Prime, you need to go to the strategy of how you do your Thursday night football broadcast with the old school lead guy and a newer school analyst.
Mm-hmm. Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit.
Yeah.
We're available.
If you... I'll travel.
Just saying, we're available.
Let's go.
Let's go back to Monday, where during that press conference, Steve Phelps talked about several other things, including things like...
I want to beat my head through a wall with what he said right here.
Pumping the brakes on the idea of adding horsepower back into the Cup Series cars. There's been a lot of talk about that. Phelps said, quote, I don't think the answer is more horsepower because more horsepower is expensive. If you ask a driver what's going to solve it, they're always going to say, give me more horsepower. It's a thing. I'm not a driver. But I've listened to enough drivers, and that's their solution. So the question is that really what it is? I don't know. I think there's some gearing things that we're looking at as well, some shifting things. Now, you and I have talked about this. With the advent of this Gen 7 car, 5-speed sequential gearbox, we've seen them shifting in places that we never saw them shifting before. I get that. And some of that could, yes, be solved by gearing. But really, when Formula One is topping 1,000 horsepower or edging at right at 1,000 horsepower, and IndyCar has talked about building up to getting close to Formula One's number.
Yep.
NASCAR's over here going, more horsepower? No. We're a racing series. What do we need more horsepower for? You see the problem? I'll let the resident driver take it from here.
I don't think I have enough time before we have to take our next scheduled break. So we may need to do that and give
I'll
me
tell you
time to
what.
think on that one.
We'll go ahead and take this break right here. We'll let him ruminate on it. We'll talk about the Daytona 500. There's good news there. Roush Fenway is talking about adding a third car. Good news at JTG Dougherty Racing coming up as well, because they've got themselves pretty solidified there. And we're going to show you another new car. We talked about the Ford Mustang Dark Horse about a month ago now. Got another reveal coming up when we come back.
We will be right back with more on the Championship Racing Network.
Fall is the perfect... probably not going to see more horsepower numbers here in the near future. And Matt, you've had a chance to think about that. Your thoughts?
Dear Steve Phelps.
Open letter.
Yeah. If you got, let's just take the full field number. If you got 40 competitors, they're telling you the thing that would make the racing better is more horsepower, I think I would be listening to them.
Okay.
Because if you don't sit your keister in one of those LaJoy or Butler built seats and have a carbon fiber cocoon with padding around you and latch a 5-point harness over your legs and into your crotch and how it latches down onto you and cinch a steering wheel on, don't tell me that you know the answer, because you don't.
Okay.
I'm sorry, and I may get ridiculed or lambasted or whatever. I don't care. This is the problem with 80, and I'm using the number 80% of the executives that is within the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. 80% of them have never sat their rear ends in a seat, latched the harness, clicked the steering wheel, fire the engine up, and put their foot behind anywhere from, if they're in a Busch Series car, let's say Busch Series back in the day, 650 to 700 for a Cup car, in excess of 900 in its heyday. Here's some names for you. And I can't believe I'm actually throwing this name out there, but I can, because he did it.
Okay.
Ben Kennedy drove. Elton Sawyer drove. Chad Little drove.
Yep.
Jesse Little drove. Let's see, who else? And I know he's an official. David Green. That name ring a bell?
Yeah.
Those are 5 names in particular. They drove. They know. They know what it takes to make a race really good, instead of somebody sitting there going to pin, oh, we need to take our cars and put this shock or this spring or this throttle stop or this throttle body or do the engines to this right here. And you've never pulled a helmet down over your cranial skull and cinched it up. I don't want to hear it. If they're telling you that's the problem, fix it.
So here's the quote, once again from Steve Phelps. I don't think the answer is more horsepower, because more horsepower is expensive. You built these cars. Not necessarily Cup cars, but you built race cars. He's right.
I've built an engine.
He's right in the fact that if you're trying to get maximum horsepower, those kind of parts are more expensive. The question is that number so prohibitive?
No.
As Steve Phelps seems to be making it sound.
No. It's not. Because you could probably, and I'm going to start this in a posthumously manner. Late Randy Dorton. The late Runt Pittman. That name ring a bell? The engine builder of some insanely, stupidly fast super speedway cars back in the day. Remember that number 4 Kodak car? That was the chief engine builder, Runt Pittman. The late Robert Yates. Those 3, posthumously. Okay?
And Doug Yates learned pretty well from his dad.
And I'm pretty sure Doug Yates has got a pretty successful engine program going to Ford right now, last I checked.
Yeah, he does.
Okay. Doug Yates. Let's see. Who can I throw out there? Spenny Clendenin. That name ring a bell? RCR's engine builder. Okay. How about Mark Cronquist, the engine builder for none other than JGR's Xfinity team. Those names in particular. I guarantee you go ask them, 2 as well. Little things here and there, you can maximize your horsepower at minimal cost. You could probably, and I'm going to Cup engines, because they've gotten so radically dynamic the last few years, you could probably ask Doug Yates, and he'd probably say, at minimal cost, with lighter weight materials, which will get you more horsepower, maybe 50,000 an engine. Maybe 50,000 an engine. It's not like you're saying you're going from 125 to 150,000 for a Cup engine going up to 400,000.
Right.
No way. No way.
Okay. Let's talk some good news here. Officials at Daytona International Speedway. This could be good or bad news depending on your situation. If you wanted to go to the Daytona 500, I hope you already got your tickets. They announced on Tuesday of this week the 2024 edition of the Great American Race, as Ken Squire termed it, the Daytona 500, sold out of the grandstand and camping space parking passes. This marks the earliest sellout in the Cup Series modern history. Remember, that began in 1972. So we're talking over 50 years. This is the 9th straight sellout for the Daytona 500. Now, I will note, there are tickets available, limited to places like the Fan Zone, hospitality packages like the Daytona 500 Club and the 31 Degree Club. But you can still get in, but you just can't get a grandstand or a camping spot. Start acting quicker, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Better get on it.
Over at Roush Fenway Racing, they're a 2-car team full-time, but for the 2024 Daytona 500, they're going to break out a 3rd car. It's the number 60 Ford Mustang. Number 60 has a long and pretty proud history at Roush Fenway, or Roush Fenway Keselowski. The driver that's going to be in that car in the Daytona 500 is going to be David Reagan. While the car number has been used before, it's mostly been an Xfinity Series competition where the number 60 has almost 600 starts and 94 races that it has won in the Xfinity Series over that time. For the Cup Series, RFK states that this is a new program that they're now terming Stage 60. They're going to enter it in selected races throughout the season. It will not obviously be chartered. It'll have to make it in on time. This will be an all-star car. This is kind of their edition of Project 91, if you want to choose that.
Or Toyota's 67 car.
Yeah, this is an all-star car. This is a chance for them to go and say, let's try to put this in some of the high-profile races. This probably will show up at COTA with a road course ringer in it. Mm-hmm. Probably they'll try and get this 3rd car to qualify for the Coca-Cola 600, maybe for the Southern 500, a couple of other races here and there. I would imagine
Talladega,
5 to 8 races, 10 tops. I'm not sure I'd go as many as 10.
I don't know.
I don't know what their plans are. They haven't said specifically, and they haven't said beyond the Daytona 500 and David Reagan.
Because when they first said David Reagan, I'm going, huh?
They chose him mainly because of his experience at super speedway.
Then he thought, super speedways, David Reagan's really good at. This might not be a bad move.
Yeah. If they enter this car again at either Atlanta or Talladega or the summer Daytona race,
you can bet and bank on the car will be at Atlanta Motor Speedway.
Reagan might actually be a candidate for those two.
Oh, yeah. Easy.
JTG Dougherty Racing, which dropped from a 2-car to a single-car operation for the 2023 season, saw their driver, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., actually jump out and win last year's Daytona 500 and make the playoffs. He didn't make a whole lot of noise there, but he made it. The season was a success for the team. Their sponsors have come back as well because they like what they saw. Longtime sponsor Kimberly Clark announced they've signed a sponsorship extension. No word on the length of that deal. Expect several brands to be highlighted along with Kroger Supermarkets on the number 47 car, first of which is going to be Cottonelle. That has been announced already for the Daytona 500. Right after they announced that earlier this week, the very next day, the organization said that their partnership with Bimbo Bakeries will continue into 2024 as well. That'll cover several brands like Thomas Breads, like Thomas English Muffins, Sara Lee, Entenmann's, and others. There were some brands in there that I didn't realize that Bimbo Bakeries actually had under their umbrella. So, yeah, should be a lot of fun. Now if you can just get the car to smell like a fresh bakery, it'd be really, really cool. Let's see. Then there's this. Monday of this week. This will be the first of a few pictures that we're going to show you throughout the course. Not many, but a few. Monday of this week, Toyota took the wraps off of their 2024 Camry XSE Cup Series body. That's the one that they're going to use in the Cup Series next year. This one, they state, will much closer emulate the new for 2025 model year Camry that'll hit the roads. Now, this is one of the best-selling sedans in the United States, really over the past couple of decades. But as opposed to the current one, 2024, 2023, 2022 model year, so to speak, a lot less angular, a lot more rounded on this particular vehicle version of it. And David Wilson, who's the president of Toyota Racing Development USA, said of this new race car, quote, "What's most important really is the process, the commitment that the OEMs have with NASCAR to make sure that what we race is what we sell. It wasn't always that way. It was just since 2013 that we came off this new way of doing it. And honestly, I think it's still one of the best initiatives that NASCAR has brought to the sport because it allowed our fans to truly identify a Toyota Camry versus a Ford Mustang versus a Chevrolet Camaro. All of those features," Wilson continued, "are incorporated into our new Camry, and somehow our really smart aerodynamicists have got it to look pretty good in the wind tunnel. So I love it when we can build a great-looking car, a car that's true to the design, but it's going to be good on the racetrack as well." Now, this is the second new body reveal in a month, give or take. Early in the month of November, we showed you a picture of the Ford Mustang Dark Horse. And we showed it to you at that time, as we did with this new Camry, that they're brand new. Chevrolet, on the other hand, they're sticking with the Camaro for the next couple of years because there actually is no new Camaro model forthcoming, at least not like the Camaro is right now. Chevrolet continues to talk about reviving the Camaro name. Please, God, don't do this. In an SUV form. But that's another story for another day. Wilson said that Toyota's TRD division worked closely with the Calty Design Studio in California to not only work on the street car, but the race car iterations and features that Wilson is terming quote-unquote hammerhead styling. In other words, using slimmer upper grille connecting to a slimmer but wider angled headlights lower on the front fascia. The angles of the 2023 Camry smoothed out, rounded out, and that expands over to the rear fascia as well, more rounded, slimmer, and wider taillights. Wilson said that this model spent a lot of time in the wind tunnel to get refined. It's got a flatter front fascia as well, believes that'll help the car on the super speedways, Daytona, Talladega, Atlanta. And he's got something there because we haven't seen a Camry win at any of those three tracks in the Gen 7 car. But you're not a big fan. And
Nope.
I'm looking at this car, which again is now up on CRN Live on YouTube. We want to thank Toyota and NASCAR.com. I'll say this. Looks-wise, I see where he's coming from the wind tunnel. This thing seems pretty smooth. Kind of jelly bean smooth, truth be told. And for aerodynamicists, that's fantastic. I get it. And there was one other one that had kind of a side look on it. I kind of see where he's coming from kind of the flatter nose. But again, you can only push on the straights. It's not like the old days when you could push all the way around the track. You can't push in the corners anymore. You can only push on the straights.
That's an Xfinity and Truck Cup is fair game if you got the fortitude to pull it off. Do this.
I'm trying to sell myself. I'm really trying to sell myself on this Camry.
Guess what? I'm not sold.
Because I'm not totally.
Because if you close your eyes and you picture a ghost carbon fiber gray, black, whatever color you want to use, COT car.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the front fascia and the pitch of the front nose and how it squares off, and tell me if that's not a mirror image of a ghost-looking COT car.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from.
Remember the days of the tandem draft, boys?
Oh, yeah.
It's about to be back. Because you see that right there where that Camry is on the front, where it's square? Guess what? That is better known as a push point.
Yeah. So, and remember, they're not running the Camry in the Xfinity series. That's the Supra.
When I seen this and I saw the ghost of this car, I thought Toyota's bringing the Supra to Cup. That was my first thought.
Yeah.
Then I went, what is this?
I'm going to be real curious. I mean, there is no two-door Camry. They stopped building that a long time ago, and they didn't even call it a Camry back then. It was called a Solara. But I'll be real curious to see how this translates to the road-going car. Because I'll give them credit for this. One of the biggest complaints that both you and I and this show have had really since the beginning of this 3 radio stations and a show title name ago, is that when I got interested in stock car racing, when you started to realize as a young little kid, stock car racing, those cars had much more than just a passing resemblance to the car that you could buy when you went to the local dealership. And it didn't matter whether it was Chevrolet, Ford, granted it wasn't Toyota back then, Chevrolet, Ford, or any of the other affiliated ones.
Chevrolet, Ford, Pontiac, Buick, Oldsmobile.
Ford and Mercury, Chrysler, Plymouth, and Dodge. You know, back in the days when we had all of those brands. Remember them, kids?
Yeah,
Ask your parents.
When I got really hard and heavy going into it,
you're looking
Here
up
we
something.
go.
What are you looking for?
this is the result of the very first race that I attended.
Okay.
The Die Hard 500 at Talladega, 1989. Infield, turn 2, sitting in a truck, burning up to death.
See, I predate you a little bit, but okay, go ahead.
You've got Oldsmobile, Ford, Pontiac, Buick, Chevrolet. Oldsmobile, Ford, Pontiac, Buick, Chevrolet.
Mercury,
That's five manufacturers in the field alone in 1989.
Chrysler was out, so there's no Chrysler, no Plymouth, no Dodge. I think Mercury was out by that point in time, so no Cougars.
The Oldsmobile Cutlass, the Buick Regal, Pontiac Grand Prix, Ford Thunderbird, and Chevrolet Lumina.
Yeah, that short period of time. And even then, I mean, all the aero stuff that was on those cars, it still had a much more close resemblance.
Mm-hmm.
But you go back a generation before that. Last Saturday morning on YouTube, for those of you that checked it out, we posted a video that I did with producer John that kind of filled out what some of you had commented on the last time we did a show from each of our respective homes. In that my background was the diecast collectibles collection that I've got of 124 scale cars. And I showed you the very first one. And that technically was the third of Darrell Waltrip's 3 championship wins in the early to mid 1980s. You know, back when a Chevy Monte Carlo SS, other than putting a fairly good-sized spoiler on the back, looked a heck of a lot like the Chevy Monte Carlo SS that you walked down to your local Chevy dealership and bought. Now, that wasn't, at that point in time, obviously, that car. They were roll cage cars. The days of going and buying a car at your local dealership and hauling it off to the racetrack and racing it, they were long gone by that point in time. But the bodies still looked like it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got into the 2000s, and we started to radically change what the cars looked like, to the point where the cars didn't look like the road-going car anymore. And then they came out with the god-awful COT, quote-unquote, car of tomorrow. All that was, truth be told, was a sticker to tell you the difference between a Chevy, a Ford, and a Toyota. They've done a better job of separating out and allowing you to understand now, just by looking at them, the difference between a Camaro, a Mustang, and a Camry. And I like that. But at the same time, they've put this thing through a whole lot of wind tunnel testing. And that's great. Fantastic. Knock yourself out, Toyota. It'll probably still sell well because you've got a great reputation for quality cars. But I am curious as to how it's going to translate when they actually put it on the road. And I'm curious as to how this is going to translate once you actually put it out onto the track. Because wind tunnel testing is one thing. Putting it out on the racetrack, that's something else entirely.
Bingo.
We'll be back after this.
We will be right back. Championship Racing Network.
Let's talk about some other things here, as there's still a lot of news to get to, and we really have barely scratched the surface. We spent a lot of time talking about media rights and cars. One of the Toyota drivers, Denny Hamlin, stated he underwent successful shoulder surgery the day before Thanksgiving. Says he'll be ready for the 2024 season. Joe Gibbs Racing released a statement, said that it was for an existing problem, while Hamlin stated on his podcast it was something he sustained in a crash during the playoffs. He added this, quote, "It's just part of normal maintenance for me on the off season. Like, what surgery are we having? It's pretty on the regular at this point in time, but once we get that stuff fixed, I think I'll certainly be better and ready to go for 2024. Thursday, as he arrived in Nashville for the Champions Banquet, Hamlin updated his shoulder situation, said that his doctors recommended at least 3 months of rest and rehabilitation. That would actually put the Clash as a possible miss for him, but again, he says his plan is to race in the Daytona 500. Good luck. Do it right.
I wear a size 58 Alpine Star suit. I will put FedEx on the front of it.
There you go. Thank you. Speaking of the Champions Banquet, National Motorsports Press Association Most Popular Driver Awards were announced on Nashville. It was somewhat inexplicably not televised live by either of NASCAR's current television partners.
It's on tape delay.
It'll
Peacock.
It'll show up on Peacock on Sunday.
Which is stupid.
Duh. For the Cup Series, despite winning the 2023 title, Ryan Blaney came up just short. For the first time that I've noted, the National Motorsports Press Association, of which Matt and I are members to be fully transparent here, released to the public the voting results, at least of the top three in the Cup Series. Finishing second in the voting, Ryan Blaney to Chase Elliott. This right here just proves to me that as long as Chase Elliott is a driver in the Cup Series, he will win the NASCAR Cup Series Most Popular Driver Award. Why? Chase Elliott, think about this, endured his worst Cup Series season of his career. He missed 7 races this year. He missed the playoffs. If there was ever a time when he wasn't going to win it, it was going to be this year. And he still won it, despite not running an entire year. So Chase Elliott, congratulations. You are the winner of the popularity ballot stuffing vote in perpetuity until you retire.
Ding. Other
awards from the NMPA, once again, to be transparent, Matt and I are members. We didn't have a say in the Most Popular Driver Awards. Xfinity Most Series Popular Driver Award won by Justin Allgaier. This is his 4th win. He won 3 in a row before 2022. He now has it again. Noah Gragson, by the way, won it in 2022. Haley Deegan claimed the honor for the 3rd straight year in the Craftsman Truck Series, which just proves as long as she stays there, which she's not, she's jumping up to the Xfinity Series, that she would do that. And there's a chance that she might challenge Justin Allgaier for the Xfinity Series Most Popular Driver.
Doubt.
Again, this is a kind of a ballot stuffing measure in the grand scheme of things. We'll see. Then there was an award that both Matt and I did have a say in. It's the Myers Brother Awards. This recognizes people who have or are providing major contributions to the sport of stock car racing. This year's winner, for the 2nd time, the late Sherry Pollux. NMPA members voted to honor her posthumously. She passed away, as we talked about here on the show, from cancer back in September after being first diagnosed with it back in 2014. She and her longtime partner and 2017 Cup Series champion Martin Truex Jr. started a foundation to help those, especially children, who are diagnosed with cancer, doing events like Catwalk for a Cause, which started in 2010 and actually raised over $4 million for cancer research since that time. Again, this marks her 2nd time being named the recipient of the Myers Brothers Award. She and Martin Truex Jr. were co-named as winners of that back in 2016. And truth be told, can't think of a better person. I mean, all of the people who are nominated, worthy, but Sherry Pollux, so deserving.
Absolutely.
So deserving.
Absolutely.
Chase Briscoe. Hard to believe this, because he's now going into his, correct me if I'm wrong, 3rd year?
Yes.
At Stewart-Haas Racing?
Yep.
In the Flagship 14? He's now the veteran driver at Stewart-Haas Racing. He's got more time in an SHR Cup Series seat than any of his teammates now. One of his major primary sponsors of 2023, Mahindra, has renewed their deal. He'll and will remain on the car as a multi-year deal as a primary sponsor. Briscoe noted he uses them at his home in Mitchell, Indiana, and at his North Carolina home, where he has a 17-acre plot of land Tony Stewart added he uses Mahindra at his places as well. You get the funny feeling they might have gotten a couple of tractors courtesy of the deal, but
Probably so.
they made pretty good ads this past year. I'll give them that. Noted, by the way, this weekend, famed Snowball Derby at Five Flags Speedway in Pensacola. It's easy for me to say. NASCAR going to have a pretty big presence at the track for the well-known late model event as of Monday. 53 official entries. That may have changed since then. I did not look it up, and I will admit that that's a failure of mine.
It's still that.
Okay. The 53 entries include Cup Series championship contender William Byron, a former winner of the event, Eric Jones. It was Eric Jones beating Kyle Busch that actually caused Kyle Busch to sign him to move into NASCAR. Also racing there, new for 2024 Cup Series driver Carson Hocevar, Stewart Haas Racing driver Ryan Preece, and new to Stewart Haas Racing driver Noah Gragson coming. That's just from the Cup Series. Other drivers from NASCAR include William Sawalich, Derek Kraus, Sammy Smith, Jake Garcia, Ty Majeski, and Connor Jones. You got another NASCAR driver of note, Canada Series title winner Trayton Lapsevich, and you got ARCA Menard Series driver Derek Thorne, who won this race back in 2022.
Here's an interesting little side note here that I seen yesterday, and I'm verifying it looking at the official entry list right here.
Okay.
Ryan Preece driving a KHI car. It is not Rodney Childers crew chiefing the car this weekend.
Okay.
It's none other than Chris Gabehart,
Oh, there you go.
Denny Hamlin's Cup crew chief.
That's an interesting move.
Crew chief in a KHI car.
Okay, then. Kind of do wonder what's going on there. We might be trying to read too much into that.
I don't know.
But it is an interesting connection.
I found it interesting.
Very.
I mean, you got Tony Uri Jr. crew chiefing for John Bolin, the pride of Jasper, Alabama.
Can see that.
Tony Uri Sr., on the Snowball car. The Snowflake car is Tony Uri Jr.
Oh, okay.
Tells me he's driving the house car for Fury.
Yeah, sounds like.
That's interesting.
Yeah, good stuff. Should be an interesting show. If you have not gone, by the way, to the Snowball Derby, it's definitely worth it.
Oh, no doubt.
Pensacola is a nice area. There's a lot of stuff not that far away. I mean, it's sandwiched in between Mobile, Gulf Shores on the west side and on the east side, Fort Walton Beach. And there's a lot of stuff that you can go do. And Five Flag Speedway is a really, really cool small track.
Mark verified 50 qualified last night.
There you go. Xfinity Series news. Congratulations out to Xfinity Series driver Brett Moffitt and his wife Stephanie, who announced they're expecting their second child due in May. Moffitt posted on social media, quote, Coop, their son, has a new title coming in May of 2024. He'll be officially promoted to Big Brother. Happy to announce our little family is continuing to grow, but that's all he announced. They may not know. They may decide to wait until the birth to find out what gender, assuming they believe in that sort of thing. Did I just say that? Sam Hunt Racing, otherwise known as the other SHR, they're looking for a new driver. The team released a post on social media saying, quote, 2 top 5 and 9 top 10 finishes in 2023, a record-breaking year for Kaz Gralla behind the wheel of our number 26 GR Super. Kaz, thank you for all you've done here at Sam Hunt Racing. We wish you the very best in your next venture. The Gralla's not going to be in that car next year, but he also hasn't said where he might be going. And the team has not yet hinted as to who they're looking at to be the next driver of the number 26. Gonna have to figure that out pretty quick. Kyle Sieg set to head into 2024 with a bit more of a secure future for himself. He knows that he's about to embark on his first full-time Xfinity Series season. He returns to the family-owned, I'm sure everyone's shocked by this, RSS Racing. He'll pilot the number 28 car next year, the entire year. Sieg, now 22, does have 50 Xfinity Series starts to his credit. All are with the family-owned RSS Racing team. 2 races in 2021, 17 more in 2022. He raced all but 2 races this past year. He did not race on the road course at Sonoma or the street course in Chicago. The team turned the car over to Cup Series regular Eric Almirola at Sonoma. He won that race. Then they turned to Brett Sherman in Chicago. Didn't have anywhere near Almirola's kind of day on the streets of Chicago. He finished 34th. They're going to put Kyle in the car full-time. Means he and his brother Ryan will be teammates for the entire year next year at RSS Racing.
Who knows? Malcolm may be in the middle.
There you go. Yeah, we keep hearing about that. Frankie Muniz, we'll keep you updated.
Yep.
DGM Racing has announced their 2024 lineup. They're bringing in Kyle Weatherman. He's going to drive their number 91 on a full-time basis next year. This actually will mark Weatherman's first full-time season in Cup Series competition with one team. He's racked up 109 starts since he joined the Xfinity Series operations back in 2019. He's run for several teams. He started 25 races in 2023, split among DGR, JDS, FRS Racing, SS Greenlight Racing, and Our Motorsports. The number 91 is the first announcement from DGM Motorsports, who actually fielded 3 cars in 2023, 2 of them full-time, the 91 and the 92, and 1 part-time, the number 36. Now, Josh Williams had driven the number 92 for the team in 2023 on a full-time basis, but remember, he's moving over to Calig Racing, so they're going to have to fill the 92 as well. Mm-hmm. A driver looking for a ride, hello DGM, is Matt DiBenedetto. He announced just before the end of the year he was going to be leaving Rackley War Racing by the end of the year. Well, Rackley War Racing didn't wait. They booted him out of the building with 3 races left. And he's still without a ride. Posted to Instagram this week updating his fans, quote, just an update of everything's going on. Everything's good. Everything's good in our world. No, I'm not retiring. I love NASCAR. Love driving in circles for a living. I'm not going anywhere. Shorter answer is, we're working on sponsors. Okay. Good luck. Matt DiBenedetto is a much better driver than the teams that he's been with and the cars and his record would state. He's a much better driver.
I can't disagree with that.
Than that would show.
I can't disagree with that.
I still believe, honestly, that he should have won that Bristol night race.
Yeah. Yeah, should have.
Oh, well.
Yeah, he should have. It was his.
Yeah. And then this little bit of interesting news from the NASCAR-related world. Kevin Harvick might no longer be racing in the Cup Series, but racing is so much in his blood that he's moving from the car to the Fox Sports booth beginning for 2024. He's going to help the network on their Cup Series broadcasts. It's also kind of following in the footsteps of his friend and former boss, Tony Stewart. Racetrack ownership. Tim and Lisa Huddleston recently bought Kern County Raceway in Bakersfield, California, but Harvick's one of their co-investors, and as such, the Huddlestons have renamed this track. The official name is Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway. Harvick's going to be working closely with the majority ownership to ensure the longevity of the facility. 2014 Cup Series champion said of this particular venture, quote, Bakersfield's my home. I'm committed to giving back and ensuring a bright future for motorsports in our community. Together with Tim and Lisa, we will do everything in our power to make racing in Bakersfield as strong as it has ever been.
Hey, here's a wild idea for NASCAR.
Sure.
Kern County is a pretty substantial little short track in Southern California.
Busch-like Clash anymore?
Can we just scrap building a football stadium racetrack and basically giving USC free field every year to give up 50 points a year on every team? Let 50 points a year get scored on them every game at home? Sure.
Kern County Raceway. Look into it. When we come back, we'll talk Tony Stewart, one of Tony Stewart's other ventures, the Superstar Racing Experience. They're filling out their season a little bit more. We'll give you all the details next, right here, as the Championship Racing Network for this first Saturday in December continues.
Don't touch that dial. The Championship Racing Network will be right back.
We are back, and hey, when we talked last 2 weeks ago, hard to believe it's already been 2 weeks, 2024 schedule for the Superstar Racing Experience announced 2 of their 6 races. It's been filled in a little bit more. We now know the first 4 races are official. They're going to be July 11th at Stafford Speedway in Connecticut. That was previously announced. July 18th, they're going to try again for Thunder Road in Barrie, Vermont. This is the as-promised makeup from the flood out from earlier on this year. July 24th, they're going to move to Slinger Speedway, which they've been at before heading up to Michigan for the 2nd year in a row to Berlin Raceway, as previously announced. So that leaves 2 openings. In other words, the final 2 races of the 4th season of the series. That's August 8th, August 14th. We'll get back to that. Thinking of the first 4 races this year, not terrifically different from 2023 to 2024. Not that that's a bad thing, because they're good tracks.
Yeah, they're good tracks, but SRX is kind of divulging their way away from what they set out to go for.
Try to go all around the country.
All around the country and be at diversified facilities.
Yeah. Well,
Slinger, I'm kind of glad they're going back to Slinger. Slinger put on a really good show that first year.
Yep. This will be 3 of 4 years for staff?
All 4.
All 4? Okay. Couldn't remember. Berlin 2 years in a row, 2 years trying for Barrie, Vermont in a row.
Mm-hmm.
But again, let's go back to this, because the series will again be on ESPN exclusively. It'll be Thursday Night Thunder. It should be noted that 4 announced tracks, they're all the paved tracks. Another thing that the SRX series prides itself on is running on dirt as well, so the final 2 races likely will be on dirt, but we still don't know where. We did get something of a hint, however, when SRX CEO Don Hawk came out late in this week and stated that things are in the works on those final 2 races. He said at the Race Industry Week seminar, quote, "There's a reason we announced the 4 pavement tracks, because the 2 dirt tracks are still in play. One of them is in Canada," he teased at the end of that.
That's the one I'm thinking of. That's not a bad one.
Gotta say, though, the first couple of years of this, and they've been pretty much, we'll call it Mississippi River East centric for the most part. But I will say this. This has become Mid-Atlantic North all of a sudden from what we're seeing.
It has, because it was, like you said, Mississippi River East.
Mm-hmm.
Then it kind of in a way shifted Mid-South.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like you say, it's Mid-Atlantic North.
Yeah.
With maybe a little leap out to the Midwest.
If they ever do truly go nationwide here in the United States,
For the love of God, Don Hawk, let me set the schedule. Let me set the schedule.
If they ever do, though, with Kevin Harvick's connection at Kern County,
there's one.
I could see them going there real quick. And the thing that I would do is I might be willing to do an East Coast to West Coast or West Coast to East Coast swing. In other words, finding places geographically that just make you go from one place further along in that direction all the way across the country. Mm-hmm. I think it'd be a cool thing. We'll see what happens.
Well, I could come up with a really good Southern swing. A real good one.
It'd be a lot of fun.
It would be.
National Hot Rod Association news, where we have noted all season long the dominance of Red Bull Racing driver Max Verstappen. We'll recap that shortly, but the NHRA Pro Stock motorcycle pilot Gage Herrera might have actually been a little more dominant. So for the first time, potentially ever in the history of racing media anywhere, we're actually going to compare the NHRA and Formula One. For example, the NHRA's Pro Stock Motorcycle Division raced 15 times this season. Herrera claimed the number 1 qualifier in 14 of those times. That's a new NHRA record. He claimed 11 event wins over 15, another all-time division record. And in his matchups, he went 50-4 through all rounds. That's an incredible 93% win percentage on the season. Another NHRA mark.
It is.
19 of 22 races for Max Verstappen. I don't know how many times he qualified on the pole, but it was nowhere near all but one. I can guarantee you that. So, yeah, it's more than possible that Gage Herrera could be considered to have had the more dominant season than Max Verstappen. Just saying.
Let's see here.
While you're looking that up, get another picture ready to go because we're about to be coming to it.
It's ready.
First, over at Paul Lee Racing. Remember them? Maybe not. They've been a fairly kind of under the radar funny car operation. But he's got himself a new crew chief. Veteran NHRA crew chief Johnny Lindberg. Lindberg is moving up from top alcohol funny car to the Camping World Drag Racing Series Nitro funny car division. Lee is hoping that helps him to advance his team to not only be full-time on a much more regular basis, but a winning organization as well. Lindberg is well known for his exploits in the NHRA. He got into it back in 2014 as a driver, crew chief, and fabricator. And with that background and the help of consultant John Medlin, Paul Lee is hoping that this team takes a massive jump forward and allows him to just simply concentrate on the driving aspect that much more.
Answer that question. Verstappen won 12 of the 22 poles. 12 poles, whatever.
12 poles out of 22.
12 out of 22.
Versus 14 out of 15.
Yeah, it's a little bit higher.
And considering he won 14 of the 15 races versus 19 of 22. And I get how dominant Max Verstappen's year was. Don't get me wrong. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I say this. It could be easily argued Gage Herrera had the more dominant year.
Can confirm.
Then this note. You ever heard the name Chip Foose?
Might have.
I got to admit, I loved the show Overhaul It. Loved it. Chip Foose was one of the lead guys on that show. Well known as a car designer, but he's very much a motorsport enthusiast as well. He has actually helped Team Kalitta in designing some of their race cars. So it probably shouldn't be a surprise to us that he had the chance to jump into a brand new Dodge Demon 170 at the Wild Horse Motorsports Park in Arizona and claimed an NHRA license. Now, the Dodge Demon 170 is eligible for official NHRA competition. So, yes, this is a legit license. With the Radford Racing School in kind of cahoots on this situation, they lent one for Foose to use, and he's got himself, and I didn't even know this was a possibility, but he's got himself what they call a 9-second license. Claimed it last weekend. NHRA Pacific Division Director Matt DeYoung was a witness. You'll see on the pictures on CRN Live on YouTube, courtesy of NHRA.com, that he presented Foose with his license when the timing was confirmed. NHRA officials announced also, by the way, first of all, congratulations out to Foose. I think that's a cool deal. And here's the thing.
Yep.
If Radford Racing School would like to promote CRN to do that, let us know we can. We'll be there.
Have helmet, will travel.
I'd need to borrow a helmet, but I'm sure I can find one. NHRA officials announced an extension of their deal with Toyota. It keeps them as the official car of the NHRA. It's a deal that kind of began back in 2002 when Toyota and the NHRA first teamed up, and then Toyota became the official car starting in 2014. To IndyCar. Now, we spent a pretty good portion of hour number one talking about NASCAR's television rights deals, now settled through the 2031 season. Well, now IndyCar has to get serious about doing that themselves. Their deal with NBC Sports comes to an end at the end of the 2024 season. IndyCar president Mark Miles noting the original deal was made in 2018 to only go through 2021, but then COVID hit and the two sides talked about it and they extended it 2 times to run through the 2024 year. Here's the thing. Unlike NASCAR, NASCAR had an exclusive negotiating rights window built into the contract for their incumbent TV partners. IndyCar's got no such clause, which means they can talk to anybody they want to, including NBC Sports. So if you're interested, ABC, in getting it back, or CBS in getting back into the racing motorsports television coverage, or CW, might be looking for a partner for your Xfinity coverage. It's open. Just saying. Miles said he's racking up some air travel miles as he's talking to several candidates, both television networks and streaming platforms, but he gave no indication of when he might have something more concrete to announce. Probably not until we get into the heart of the 2024 season, if I'm guessing, he's probably shooting for May to chat about this when they're gearing up for the Indy 500. That's a guess.
Probably. I would say that guess is close.
Yeah. One other note connecting NASCAR to IndyCar, Team Penske driver Joseph Newgarden celebrated his Team Penske teammate Ryan Blaney's success in winning the 2023 Cup Series title. But he's getting a tattoo of Blaney's bearded face and the champion's trophy on his right thigh.
Holy paint job if I've ever seen one.
Now, it is a temporary tattoo, I will say that.
Yep.
But it was him paying off a promise to Blaney in a text thread that started back on November the 6th. The two were texting back and forth when Newgarden stated this, quote, "If you win the championship, I'm going to get your face tattooed on my thigh." Blaney responded, "Oh, let's blank. It's a family show. Go." After winning the title, Blaney poked the bear by asking Newgarden, "Let's talk numbers. What's the diameter of this portrait of an 1800s president going to be?" Newgarden's response, without missing a beat, quote, "No one said anything about size, Mr. President." For the record, looks to be about, what, 4 inches tall?
Approximately.
And I got to give credit to the tattoo artist. It's a pretty good rendition of Ryan Blaney.
Hey, yeah, considering it was done with a paintbrush.
My question is how long does that last?
Probably already washed off.
But he got a picture of it.
Yep.
Go look up the Twitter. I'm still going to call it Twitter. I'm sorry, Elon Musk. I can't call it X. I just can't. It's Twitter.
Yeah, I know.
Go check out Joseph Newgarden's Twitter account. Miles also got to talking about some other things. If you watched the first season of 100 Days to Indy on the CW network, there's going to be a season 2. Season 1 was the 6-part documentary that detailed the beginning of the 2023 season all the way up to the Indy 500. Miles said, quote, "I think 100 Days to Indy, there's going to be a season 2, and it'll be with CW, maybe different partners internationally. I've talked about 100 Days to Indy in another conversation, advancing that ball into a new interest in a kind of a scripted TV series, so there's that interest out there as well." I don't know about the scripted TV series thing, but keeping 100 Days to Indy, it's a smart move.
Oh, very.
Very smart move.
Very.
Question is, with Vice Media's problem, they were the partner in producing this for year number 1. They're having severe financial problems. They're not even guaranteed to be in business for year number 2. Vice Media might not be the production partner on this anymore. Time will tell.
We'll see.
The saga of Alex Palou and his multiple contracts is about to head to court. In papers filed in the case, ahead of the case being heard in British court, by the way, Palou admits that he is indeed in breach of contract with the McLaren. Okay. If I'm the judge, judgment for McLaren. But anyway, when he decided to not go over to them, stayed with Chip Ganassi Racing during the 2023 season, his admission in the paperwork comes in response to the McLaren lawsuit. They're seeking to get back about $23 million that the organization claims that his decision has cost them overall. I might not be willing to give him the full $23 million. Palou in the papers stated he changed his mind when he, quote, "lost trust and confidence in McLaren, in that they genuinely intended to support his ambition to race in Formula One, and decided to continue racing with Chip Ganassi Racing in the IndyCar series." Further down in the papers, a copy of which was acquired by the Associated Press, Palou, quote, "therefore admits that he renounced his contractual obligations," unquote, and, quote, "the real issue between the parties is as to the quantum of any damages to which the defendants are liable to pay," unquote. $23 million is hard to kind of justify because they're extrapolating out what they believed Alex Palou's presence with the McLaren team, both in IndyCar and potentially in Formula One, might have brought.
Mm-hmm.
That's a difficult thing to quantify.
Very.
Because unless you had a sponsor, I'll put our resident racing driver, Matt, in the role of Alex Palou.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as a sponsor of, I'll borrow Wile E. Coyote's favorite company, the Acme Corporation, I, as the head of Acme Corporation, go, "Alex Palou at McLaren? I'm in." And I've already signed a deal with McLaren that says when you get Alex Palou, slap the Acme Corporation all over his car for as long as his contract is, and it'll cost me, I'll just throw out a number, $10 million. You have a quantifiable number at that point in time because I have signed a contract as the head of Acme Corporation that says we'll commit to $10 million towards Alex Palou once he goes and races for your team. But if you haven't got that, you can't state that you know that it's $23 million.
Sure.
That's a pure guess of picking a number out of thin air. Now, I said before, if I'm the judge, this admission says, yes, he's liable for money. But this is a twofold or a two-level lawsuit. Number one, you got to admit that he is liable in breach of contract. He's already admitted it, so that's a gimme. Now we got to figure out the number. That's part number two, and that's not as cut and dry. And I don't even play a lawyer, not on the radio or television. Let's see, where else are we going here? Chip Ganassi, meanwhile, has finalized his 2024 driver line. Oh, by the way, real quick, McLaren decided to switch their official reserve driver as well. Pelot's out. There's a shock. They have gone with his fellow IndyCar driver, Pato O'Ward, for the 2024 season. F1 team's official reserve driver. He was in Abu Dhabi to see the season finale for 2023, and he did take part in a practice session as well as they start to prepare for the 2024 season. So he's already gotten his feet wet there. Ganassi has finalized their 2024 driver lineup. They announced that incoming rookie Linus Lundqvist will be taking on the team's number 8 Honda-powered entry, and American Legion is going to the number 8 car as the primary sponsor. Ganassi and Legion have partnered since 2021, covering 28 races, 12 podium finishes in that span, most of them with Graham Rahal. That includes 4 wins. Lundqvist finished out the 2023 season with Meyer Shank Racing, running 3 races for them, claimed 2 fastest lap awards and a best finish of 12th. That was in the second of 3 races and the second one of the year on the Indianapolis road course. He also raced in the Music City Grand Prix and at Gateway. He'll run the full 2024 season in the full first year of a multi-year deal with Chip Ganassi Racing.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him indeed.
How about silly season at IndyCar? How many seats are left open? How many seats are spoken for? How many entries are there going to be on a full-time basis? We'll get into that and talk Formula One, dealing with that same issue. Coming up here in just a couple of moments, but we got to take our final break of this morning. We'll be right back on this edition of the Championship Racing Network. One final segment here, so let's see how much of this we can get in. Might be able to get all of it. We'll find out.
We'll try it.
So we noticed that Linus Lundqvist is signed to Chip Ganassi Racing. With that move becoming official, at this time we have 27 full-time entries for the upcoming season. It's the same number as 2023. But there are still seats open. AJ Foyt Racing actually hasn't announced either of the drivers for their 2 cars for 2024, but insist they will be a 2-car operation. Chip Ganassi Racing as a 4-car team have not announced the details for Kiffin Simpson's entry yet, but we know it's 4. Dale Coyne Racing also fielding 2 full-time cars, have no drivers assigned to either ride either. So there are options there. The split also has Honda providing engines to 15 cars. Chevrolet will take the other dozen, but Chevrolet and their teams note that the single race entries that will inevitably come for the Indy 500 might jump Chevrolet entries to as many as 18 for the Indy 500. 2 are already confirmed. You got the Arrow McLaren Hendrick Motorsports combined ride for Kyle Larson, and Ed Carpenter Racing has said that they will enter indeed a 3rd car. That way they can get both Ed Carpenter and the driver he's splitting his time with. Remember, Ed Carpenter only runs the oval track races. He gives somebody else that car for the road and street course races. So all 3 of them are going to drive there. Dreyer and Reinbold, an Indy 500 only team, has said that unlike past years where they've been fielding 1 car, they'll probably actually put 2 cars in for the Indy 500. Honda's noting that for the Indy 500, they also could see Meyer Shank Racing, a 2-car operation now, maybe putting a 3rd car in for the famed race. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing continues to talk about it, but is not committed to a 4th racer either. So Honda, maybe you'll have 17 engines committed for the Indy 500. Bump day.
Yeah.
Takes on a whole new meaning when you've got potentially 35, 36 entries.
Does.
Could be cool.
Could be a good road trip, too.
Also noting that Kyle Larson is about to run the double in a cooperative effort between his NASCAR team, Hendrick Motorsports, and Arrow McLaren Indycar team. Who might be the next driver to try it? Well, how about newly crowned Cup Series champion Ryan Blaney? He does drive for Team Penske, so it kind of makes sense, right? Not according to the captain. Roger Penske admitted on Thursday his driver has indeed brought the subject up, but Penske said, quote, "It's interesting to me that Blaney said to me he looked to go to Indy. I said we're going to have to slow down a little bit. We're going to have everybody come into Indy." Blaney threw this in, quote, "I poked around the idea with RP for a couple of years now, so we'll have to see where that goes. Right now, it appears it ain't going nowhere." All of that, by the way, was news to Cup Series championship contender Kyle Larson. Said he didn't know of Blaney's interest at all, but he would love to see some drivers attempt the double. But he, kind of like Matt and I, have a little bit of a different take on it. Larson said, quote, "I'd love to see Joseph Newgarden come to the Coke 600. A lot of the guys come from the NASCAR side to do it, so it'd be interesting to see the other side of the switch." And you and I have said that before. I think it's great that the NASCAR Cup Series drivers would love to do it. I mean, John Andretti, Tony Stewart, Robbie Gordon, Kyle Busch did it. Now Kurt Busch, did it. Kyle Larson's going to do it. Kyle Busch has admitted he's got some interest in it. We got Ryan Blaney now talking about it. We keep hearing word of IndyCar drivers who state that they have so much respect for these NASCAR drivers and that they'd love to do a stock car race themselves. And every once in a while, they throw themselves in and get in a one-off on a weekend when IndyCar's not racing. But for the love, if we can get a Cup Series owner and an IndyCar owner to agree to let a Cup Series driver run the double, how come we can't get that the other way?
I've thought about that for a long time, too. If it can go one way, it can go the other way.
One would think.
Sure, yeah. One would think for sure. But I could see somebody, like you said, Joseph Newgarden.
Mm-hmm.
He would be a good one. I would think somebody the caliber of Graham Rahal.
Sure, I could see that.
James Hinchcliffe.
Yeah,
he could be good.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Would you choose like a Pato O'Ward or an Alex Palou, one of the younger kids who suddenly come up and has started to kind of dominate? And there's a reason I asked this.
I could see Pato O'Ward before Alex Palou.
Okay, there's a reason I asked this. Because you think about, for example, when you do skills competitions, not necessarily a three-point competition or the slam dunk competition in the NBA. I'm thinking more Major League Baseball. In the All-Star game, the lead up to it, they do the home run derby. And all the hitters admit that they have to somewhat alter their batting stance to ensure that they're muscling up to try and hit more home runs. And some of them are a little reticent to do that because it kind of messes them up when it comes to getting back into their regular routine. So I say that to say this. It seems, on the surface, somewhat easier to make the transition from being regularly a stock car driver to go to IndyCar and adjust than it is to be an IndyCar regular and adjust then to a stock car. Tony Stewart notwithstanding.
True.
You know, look at a Danica Patrick. Look at a Juan Pablo Montoya. Look at a... Oh, gosh, I don't know.
Sam Hornish.
Yeah, Sam Hornish. Yeah, another one.
He had more success in Xfinity cars and nationwide cars than he did in Cup.
Yeah. And could that be one of those situations where they're worried, putting yourself in the spot of an IndyCar team owner? Could you be more worried about the fact that you trying to have to figure out how the driver's going to adjust going from IndyCar to NASCAR and then coming back to IndyCar?
Yeah, because, you take the old line out of Days of Thunder. Car weighs twice as much and tires are half as wide. And you go to IndyCar and the IndyCar weighs half as much and the tires are twice as wide.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the same difference with horsepower levels. You go to IndyCar, cars weighs half as much with double the horsepower nearly. Almost.
Yeah. Yeah, especially now.
Yeah, especially now. But you really can't call from going from IndyCar to Cup only. Not nationwide, Busch, ARCA withstanding.
Right. Straight top series to top series.
Top series to top series. When you look at it, there's really only been one to have any remote level of success. And that remote used very, very loosely. And that's Montoya.
Yeah.
Because he won races.
Sure.
But you're looking from straight Cup, IndyCar to straight Cup. Danica Patrick, bust.
Yep.
Dario Franchitti, bust.
Big time. Didn't even make it full year.
Sam Hornish, bust.
Yeah. Until he dropped down to...
Nationwide and Xfinity, withstanding.
Yeah.
Let's see, who else?
Trying to think. We had Nelson Piquet Jr. try trucks for a while, but he didn't do Cup is what I can remember.
Nelson Piquet, yeah, he didn't do Cup. Nelson Piquet Jr., he won a race in truck and Xfinity.
Jenson Button ran a couple of Cup Series races earlier this year, but he's not full-time, so I can't really include him that well.
Yeah.
Those are really the big ones.
Those are the big ones.
And like you said, technically there are more failures than busts. I don't know. Time will tell. I'm with him. I'd like to see it, but we'll find out.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got here. Mark Miles talking about maybe as we go into the future, going to take a page out of the NASCAR and Formula One playbook. Been seeing a big splash of the first ever Cup Series road course race. Formula One's now got 3 races in the United States, and Penske Entertainment CEO Mark Miles says he likes that idea of big-time specialty events and said this, quote, "We're working on at least one that I think people would see as a high-impact, very different opportunity for 2025 in the United States that it's too early to talk about. But we're certainly looking for big events and big partners in the process." Now, obviously, he also was kind of alluding to the impending All-Star race coming to California's Thermal Club in March, but he then added that there continues to be talk of a non-points event in late September in Argentina. Quote, "I don't know if we're in the red zone or just inside the 50-yard line, but I think it's quite feasible even for the offseason, the post-championship part of the 2024 calendar. The Argentinian presidential election has happened. By all indications, that has not presented any new challenges to us. We have a promoter who's putting together the components for us to organize a great event. We got a fantastic facility that is available to us. So I think it could be an example of the kind of thing that we could do. We just got to get in all the I's and get them dotted and the T's, get them crossed, and hopefully it can happen and it could be formalized and made public probably in the early part of the first quarter of next year, which I think is fantastic because they need to do this. just as much as I've said in the past, and I think NASCAR has kind of started to allude to this as well, they should go to Canada. They should go south of the border with a heck of a lot of security escorting them.
A ton.
Go to Argentina, Indycar. Go to Brazil. You used to race in Brazil. Go to Brazil again. Go wherever the heck you please to go. Go to Australia. Go to Japan. Go anywhere. You used to go to Japan and race there. Remember Danica Patrick, who we just talked about a moment ago? She's got one IndyCar win. Where did it happen? Japan. Go back there. Spread this thing out. Have a good time. But do yourself another favor. Don't just make these all exhibition races. Make them points races.
Mm-hmm.
Make them count. You make them an exhibition race, gives teams an excuse not to go.
True.
Make them go. Make it a points race.
Yep.
Over to Formula One, back to that domination of Max Verstappen, and we're not belittling him any way in explaining how dominant Gage Herrera was. I want to make that perfectly clear because, again, Verstappen won all but 3 of the races of 22 that were run in this past season. The two non-winning results, I should say, 2 second-place finishes and a 5th place. That's good. In the process, he became the first Formula One driver to lead 1,000 laps in a season. Now, partially, that's because of the fact that we have more races on the schedule than really we've ever had before. But that's how dominant he is because now, for the first time in 75-plus years of Formula One racing, 1,000 laps for one driver has ever been attained. He hit that mark with 3 laps left in the season finale at Abu Dhabi. And using the modern points system, Verstappen has now claimed a record number of championship points in a year, 575, and a record-setting gap from first to second, besting his teammate Sergio Perez, who claimed 285, by more points than Perez actually scored during the season because the difference was 290. As for Perez, his year of being vastly overshadowed by his teammate did continue when he was slapped with a 5-second penalty in the season finale. It was assessed post-race. He got into Lando Norris during the race. Race stewards called the collision avoidable. It was, noting that Perez, quote, dived in late, missed the apex of the corner, and understeered towards the outside of the corner. In other words, you ran into him.
Yeah.
In Formula One speak. Perez crossed the finish line in second, but with the penalty, got dropped to 4th place behind Charles Leclerc and George Russell. It led Perez to getting on the team radio and saying, and credit to him, because I don't have to edit this, but he was still ticked, saying, quote, the stewards are a joke, man. I cannot believe it. They have been very bad this year, but this is a joke. This is really a joke. And it's an outburst that, well, it didn't sit well with Formula One. They summoned him to meet with series officials. They hit him with a formal warning, slapped him with a point to his super license for Formula One. He's got 7 now over the last 12 months. And they released a statement regarding the warning to the public and the media that said, quote, the stewards explained to the driver that they had no issue with someone disagreeing with their decisions. However, comments that amount to personal insults are a breach of the International Sporting Code, unquote. In other words, they're against the Formula One rulebook. They added that Perez did apologize to each steward individually because somewhere down the line, he forgot. I pressed the button to speak over the radio and anybody and everybody can hear it. Fair warning to everybody.
So just saying something's a joke, that's a personal insult.
When you're denigrating NASCAR or IndyCar or Formula One officials in public, the racing series will come down on you. We detailed the IndyCar seating arrangement for 2024, at least as much as we know. Things in Formula One are actually complete. The one question mark was at Williams, and that was whether, unlike AlphaTauri with Nick DeVries, they had the patience to stick with their 2023 rookie driver. Turns out they do. They're going to keep American-born driver Logan Sargent. The Fort Lauderdale, Florida 22-year-old Sargent really was the only question. He only had 1 championship point, suffered a series of crashes, never really qualified well, but Williams officials noted in announcing that they were going to bring him back that his potential outweighed the concerns from his rookie season. So now all 20 seats in Formula One are spoken for. I think that's the earliest we've ever been able to say that.
Yeah.
What else we got here? Since it was announced that AlphaTauri soon to be renamed by their parent company, Red Bull Racing, they're going to have a new name. We don't know what it is. Anyway, they're supposed to be much closer in alignment to Red Bull itself. And other teams have now begun to worry about the so-called pink Mercedes controversy of 2020. To remind you, going into that year, Racing Point, which is now Aston Martin, was using the Mercedes-Benz wind tunnel. And when they took the wraps off of their car officially for preseason testing, everyone went, they copied the Mercedes look. It was so close to the Mercedes look that they started to complain. They lodged several complaints from several teams to Formula One officials, who did a full investigation and found that the brake ducts were exact copies of the Mercedes car, and that broke sporting protocol rules. So they got fined 400,000 euros and docked 15 Constructors' Cup points, and they had to change the design. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner insists there will be no funny business like that. He said that we're, quote, an awfully long way from a pink Mercedes. There are some transferable components that are clearly listed within the regulations that you're allowed to supply, and that's what they're going to get. When you look at the car, it's quite the fundamental difference between that car and a Red Bull racing car, and arguably there are other cars on the grid which are far closer in concept than the AlphaTauri is. You've got to only look at an Aston Martin or even a McLaren. You look around the rear suspension of a McLaren, it's very close in concept to that of our own. It's really down to them how they make use of what they're permitted to within the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go back to some name that mirrors, like they were Toro Rosso. It's the Italian way of saying Red Bull.
Yeah. Simply put.
They're going to do that, and they're going to effectively be the B team again, as opposed to when they were kind of allowed to be their own team. Mm-hmm. And I kind of like that. And granted, they fell on their face this last year because they started off horribly. But they picked it up at the end of the year.
Well, that's what happens when you run an Xfinity car with a Cup Series.
Exactly.
Just saying.
So, all right. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get to the rest of it, but this is stuff that we can get back to next week, and promise we will. And hopefully you'll join us then. We haven't talked yet about the end of the year. We might, maybe, take one more weekend off, but maybe not, because neither Christmas nor New Year's falls on a day when we would air. So we might just do it. We'll talk about it more. We'll let you know. In the meantime, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy things like the Snowball Derby and whatever other racing you can get yourself into this weekend. We'll talk to you again next weekend right here on the Championship Racing Network.
This has been a presentation of the Championship Racing Network.
WDNG 1450 AM
and W236 CQ 95.1 FM Anniston.
95.1 The Mountain.
Anniston Oxford's classic station.
Here is the latest weather from Alabama's meteorologist.